Hey guys, Chris here again, and welcome to lesson 2 of our 5-day challenge, in which we look at task 1 academic writing, and it's all designed to help you get a band 7 or above in Ielts Task 1 academic. So hopefully you had a look at lesson 1 and you enjoyed lesson 1. It was a nice little introduction showing you everything that we are doing and everything that's coming up. And what we're going to do in this lesson is, so let's go on to the next page. So let's have a look at what we're going to do over the next 5 days. So yesterday we looked at understanding the task. Today we're going to look at structure and paraphrasing. Tomorrow we're going to look at how to write clear overviews. On Thursday we're going to finish off with how to write effective details. So we're finishing off our task 1 report with the details. And then on Friday we're going to look at vocabulary and grammar. So what are we going to look at today? Review and feedback. So we're going to look at the briefly what we did yesterday, just to refresh our minds about that. I'm going to give you feedback on the task that I set you yesterday. We're also then going to look at how to structure your answer. Then we're going to look at paraphrasing, and then finally I'm going to give you your second task. So let's just review a little bit of what we did yesterday. So it's really important that you realize that there are 7 different types of task 1 academic question. You could get a line graph, a bar chart, a pie chart, a table, any configuration of those. You could get multiple graphs, multiple charts. You could also get a process question, or you might get a map. And it's also really important that you understand what to consider when you're looking at these things. So if we were just looking at a line graph, we would look at what does the graph show, what's the unit of measurement, the y-axis, the x-axis, the categories, the time reference. Obviously this is going to be different for maps and process diagrams and pie charts and all of this, but what I was trying to show you here is how it's easy to break these things down and simplify them so that when you look at your question in the test, you're not like, oh my god, what's happening? What am I going to do? It becomes very, very simple. What I try and do with my VIP students, the students that I work with very closely, is simplify everything and make it as simple as possible and turn them into like IELTS robots, so that whatever question comes up, they are 100% sure about what to do, and it's easily understood, and it's easy for them to write a clear answer. So what we did in the task was we set you this question. Apologies, some of you said that it was blurry and that you couldn't see it. The reason why that is that if your internet connection is slow, Facebook what they do is they limit the clarity, the resolution of the image on the screen, just so that you can see it. Because if they gave you a really, really high resolution video, it would take you a long, long time to view it and download it. So one thing, the faster your connection, the better the picture will be. And second thing is, what I will do for the rest of the course is I will avoid any very, small details that might be difficult to read. I'll keep all of the text quite big, so that there's no problems there. And apologies for that. I understand that, some of you just don't have really, really fast internet connections. I've lived all over the world. I understand what it's like to live in a country which doesn't have a fast connection. So here's the feedback on the task. And what I asked you to do was just state the key information. So this was the easiest task that you're going to get this week. And overwhelmingly, everybody did it correctly, so well done to everybody. And you'll notice that a lot of the stuff here is the same, like number of crimes, 2012, 2003, 2012. And you'll see a lot of overlap here, but it's not about reporting this stuff. You won't actually be writing this down in the exam. What I was trying to do with that lesson was just make everything really easy to understand, and I hope that I did that. So let's move on to structure, the first thing that we're going to focus on in this lesson. So first of all, when we're talking about structures, there are no such things as Band 9 structures. They don't exist. If a teacher or a website or a book is telling you, use my structure and you'll get a Band 9, they're talking nonsense. There are no best structures. So there's no structure that is definitely going to get a band 9. If you use that, you're going to get a high score. There's no such thing as a best structure. One of the things that a lot of students do is they think that IELTS writing is like mathematics, where there's just one answer and one way of doing things. It's not like that. There are many, many correct ways to write an essay. There are many, many correct ways to write a Task 1 report. And then there's no such thing as examiner-friendly structures. I've seen this before. You wouldn't believe the number of crazy things I see online. Or there's no such thing as high-level structures. They just do not exist. So change your mindset about what structures mean. Change your mindset about them being some sort of magic pill or cheat or hack that will boost your score. They just don't exist in that way. Does that mean that we ignore them? No, they're very, very helpful and they can help you improve your writing, but they can't guarantee that you'll get a high score. So there are many different structures that are absolutely fine. Does this mean that you should learn all of the structures? No. Why? That would be a waste of time. I know that you don't have much time and I know that you want to get your scores as quickly as possible. So we're not going to show you every single structure. So how do I choose a structure that I teach? So over the years, through years of teaching people in the British Council face-to-face and years teaching people online, I found the structure that I'm going to suggest to you is it's easy to teach and it's easy to learn. All right. You don't want to pick something that is really, really complicated and it's difficult to teach and it's difficult to learn. It's also easy to use. All right. So there's a difference between learning something and using something. This structure is very, very easy to use in the exam and it actually helps you think properly in the exam. And it's very, very clear and it's very easy for the examiner to understand. So these are the criteria that I use to pick a structure. And this is the structure that I'm going to give you. It's very, very simple. Paragraph 1, introduction. Skip a line. Paragraph 2, overview. Paragraph 3, details number 1. Paragraph 4, details number 2. Okay? So what this does is it starts at a very, 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 very high level. The first paragraph is just, this is what the question is about. This is what the report is about. Then it stays quite at a high level where it just looks at things from in your overview, the most important things, the key features. And then it gets into detail. So the reason why that works is it's much, much easier to look at something from a very high level and then go closer and closer and closer into it. One thing that a lot of you will be asking, 2 questions you'll be asking. Is it okay to combine your introduction and overview? It's okay. I would avoid it. The reason why I would avoid it is I want to make the examiner 100% sure that they know where my overview is. I don't want to put it in with my introduction or put it in with my details, because then it makes it difficult to spot. And the most important thing in your whole Task 1 report is your overview. The second question a lot of you will be asking is, can you put the overview in here at the bottom? So can you put introduction and then details paragraphs and then overview at the end? Yes, that's totally fine. It actually doesn't matter where you put the overview. It's not like you're going to get a higher score or a lower score or anything like that. But again, I find it's much, much easier for students to think about the key features first, write about the key features, and then go into detail. It's just a little bit more difficult to get, sometimes students get a bit lost in the detail, and then as they're writing, it influences what they think are the key features. So I find over the years, this is the structure that is easiest to teach, easiest to learn. It's very, very clear to the examiners, and it's very, very easy to use in the exam. This is the one that I would suggest, and what we're going to do in the rest of this this course is we're going to look at each of these paragraphs in more detail. So don't worry, I'm not leaving you and just saying this is all I'm giving you. Don't worry, we're going to look at everything in much more detail. So we're going to look at introductions today, overviews tomorrow. Conclusions. So the most common question I get asked about Task 1 is, do I write a conclusion? Out of all the things on the IELTS test, this is the one that is the most confusing for students, because it's not your fault. There is a huge amount of conflicting information out there, and there's a huge amount of bad teaching about this also. I don't like to criticize other teachers. You know, a lot of teachers are trying to do a good job, but because a lot of websites that are teaching IELTS, they don't really know what they're doing. They write about conclusions in Task 1 when this isn't really true. A conclusion is a summary of your main ideas and your opinion. A Task 1 academic report contains no main ideas, and it doesn't have any opinion. So therefore, you do not write a conclusion. Why do so many people get confused? Because there's so much conflicting information out there. Also, what a lot of people do is, a lot of teachers, they see the overview at the end and they don't actually know what an overview is, even though they're IELTS teachers, and they just see it as the last paragraph and they think all last paragraphs are conclusions. So this is where the confusion comes in. So do not worry about a conclusion in your Task 1 report. You write an overview, you can put it anywhere, you can put it at the end, you can put it after your introduction, it's up to you, but do not call it a conclusion, because it's not a conclusion. A conclusion is your opinion. There's no opinion in Task 1. Conclusion is a summary of your ideas. You're not putting any ideas in your Task 1 report. You're just writing what you see. You're not including any interpretation, or any of your opinion, or adding anything from your own brain. Basically, what you're doing with Task 1 is writing exactly what you see. So there's no room for a conclusion. So please don't ask that question, because this is the last time I'm going to talk about it, because I answer that question about 10,000 times a month. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the first part of this structure, which is the introduction. So this should be 1 or 2 sentences. Most of the time it'll be 1 sentence, but sometimes it might be 2 sentences. You simply take the question and paraphrase it. It never changes. Don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple. That's all you're doing. So what you're doing is you're taking this bit, so the bit that has the red circle around it, that's the question. You're not taking this bit, the bit that I've crossed out with an orange cross, that's the instructions, okay? So this is the question, this is the instructions. It will never change. It will always be like this. You will always get a question, and then you'll always have the instructions. For the introduction, all you do is, don't worry about this, just look at this and paraphrase it. So what does paraphrasing mean? Simply means restating the sentence so that it means the same thing, but with different words. Another way to say this is just saying it again, but in your own words. So there are many different ways to paraphrase. For Task 1, synonyms are the easiest way to do this. So for Task 2, on my Task 2 course, I go into many different ways that you can paraphrase things, like changing the structure and using synonyms and a few other ways that are very effective. For Task 1, to be honest, it is very easy. It's easier to write the Task 1 paraphrase than it is a Task 2, in my opinion, because you can most of the time just use synonyms. So what do we mean by using synonyms? The line graph below shows how much money was spent on cars in 4 different countries in Asia. So this is your question, okay? So we're going to show you this question and we're going to paraphrase this. So synonyms are 2 different words that mean the same thing. For example, man and male. So a man and a male are the same thing. Country and nation, they're the same thing. Test and exam, they're the same thing. So they're the same things, but different words, and these are known as synonyms. So let's look at some common mistakes, because these, if you can avoid these 7 mistakes, you will write a very, very good introduction, because you'll avoid these common mistakes. So the first mistake that I see people making, and I look at writing every single day. People send me their writing, don't send me your writing and ask it. It's not a free service. It's part of my courses and everything else. So don't think that that means 10,000 people send me your writing. But I look at writing every single day, and these are the common mistakes that I see. So the first mistake is, I see a person trying to change every single word. And what they do is they just say the. What's a synonym of the? What's a synonym of line? Okay, change that. What's a synonym of graph? What's a synonym of below? What's a synonym of shows? I'm going to show you when I do my paraphrase. You do not need to change every word. Sometimes you can leave words out, and that is just a much, much easier way to do things, because it's just easier to paraphrase if you leave stuff out. You don't have to change every single word. Also, a common mistake is being afraid to repeat any words. So when they paraphrase, a lot of teachers teach students that when you paraphrase, you cannot copy any words. Every single word needs to change. So, for. How are you going to change for? What's another way to say for? There isn't one. Cars. There are very, very few ways that you can change that word so that it means the same. But for, imagine, how could you do that? It just doesn't happen. For this question, you're going to have to copy for. You might copy cars, you might not copy cars, but there's going to be some words, for example, and. I've been in many, many classrooms where the teacher is teaching paraphrasing and they tell their students it means all the words are changed and you cannot copy anything. That's nonsense. The third mistake that I see is, and this is probably one of the most common ones, is trying to use so-called high-level, band 9, academic, or one that I seen the other day on a very famous Ielts page on the internet was diamond words. I'd never heard that before. But what students try and do is they try and show off how great their vocabulary is. And what they do is they just insert a so-called high level or band 9 or academic words. They don't exist, by the way, which is why they're in quotation marks. And try and show off, try to show how great their vocabulary is. And when in doing that, they use a word that is just not appropriate for that sentence, or is just incorrect, or the grammar is incorrect, or something like that. You should not use a word unless you know that what it means, the collocations, how it's used, the grammar. You don't use words that you're not 100% sure about. Common mistake number 4 is using loose synonyms. Loose synonyms are words that kind of mean the same thing, but don't really mean the same thing. And I'm going to show you this in a second. Only use direct synonyms. Synonyms that actually mean the exact same thing. If you use loose synonyms, you've shown the examiner that you kind of know what you're doing, but you don't really know what you're doing. So let's have a look at this one. So this is if you go to, I think it's thesaurus.com, and you type in any word, so I put in child, and it'll give you all of these different synonyms. So all of these are synonyms, but that doesn't mean in a task 1 or even task 2 that you could just change child to anything here. Some of these are appropriate, some of them are not appropriate. Some of them are direct synonyms, some of them are very, very, very loose synonyms. Let's look at this, for example. A chick, alright? In a task 1 academic answer, if it said child, and you use chick, or brat, or mite, or squirt, those are synonyms, but it doesn't mean that you can just use them. It doesn't mean you can just insert them. And a more appropriate one would be something like a juvenile. Alright, a juvenile and a child, those are direct synonyms. It's appropriate to use it. But if you looked at something like an innocent, alright, a child and an innocent, no. They are synonyms, but it's just not appropriate to change that one for the other one within the context of IELTS. So the 5th mistake that I see is grammatical errors. So changing words around is not enough. The whole sentence needs to be grammatically correct. So what I see with what happens with a lot of students is they are aware how to use synonyms, and they change a lot of words, and they change one word for a synonym of that word, and then they stick them all together, and they don't think about how that sentence actually works grammatically. Alright, so your 25% is grammar, 25% of your mark is vocabulary. Don't mess up your vocabulary score by trying to change things. And again, that's another reason not to use words that you're not sure about. And that brings me on to the 6th mistake, collocations. So collocations are words that naturally go together. So for example, a delicious meal is a good way to describe a meal, and a handsome man is a good way to describe a man. Well, a good-looking man. But what happens when you switch them around? Would you say I had a handsome meal? No. Would you say a delicious man? Maybe, but they don't really go together. So there's certain words that just naturally go together, and you're being judged on this because it's a sign, if you don't know how to use collocations correctly, it's a sign that you're not at a very high level of English. If you know how to use collocations correctly, it's a very, very strong sign that you have a very, very good command of English. So you can't just stick 2 words beside each other without thinking about whether they collocate or not. So again, a big mistake, and this relates to the second point about grammar, is students just pick words that they think are kind of the same, mash them all up into a sentence, and they don't think about grammar and about collocations. You need to be aware of these things in order to paraphrase correctly. And the seventh one, and this is one that you can fix very, very easily, and it's one that fixes all of those mistakes that we talked about, is just practice. So if you do not practice something, if just like any skill, the more you practice it, the easier it becomes. Don't do it once, fail, and then complain that you don't know how to do it. So a lot of my students, I'll show them how to do something and they'll go away and practice it, and they'll practice it one time and they'll come back and they'll be like, teacher, your technique, your strategy, your structure or whatever it is doesn't work. It's like, why do you think it doesn't work? Well, I tried it one time and I wasn't very good at it. It's like, you have to practice it. Doing it one time is not enough. All right. Practicing is easy. For paraphrasing, you get lots of questions and you paraphrase them. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't make it more difficult than it needs to be. If you want to practice your paraphrasing, get lots of questions, try to paraphrase them. It would be also good if you showed it to somebody who knows everything about IELTS and they could give you feedback on that. Some of you will not have the money to do that. Some of you will. It's a really, really good idea if you want to get really, really good at paraphrasing. Show it to somebody who knows what they're doing, and they'll tell you, if this is correct, if the synonyms are correct, the collocations, the grammar, if it means the same thing. So here's a demo. The line graph below shows how much money was spent on cars in 4 different countries in Asia. So the line graph below, the chart. Alright, so I don't need to talk about below because I'm not drawing the graph on the answer sheet, so below can go straight away. Line graph, chart. Alright, line graph means the same thing as a chart. Shows, displays. Very, very simple. How much money was spent? Expenditure. So what I've done is I've taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words and I've just put it into one word. So if your teacher tells you that you have to change every single word and just look at one word at a time, then that's obviously not correct. On cars, I'm going to keep it on cars, and that's to show you that you do not have to change everything. In 4 different countries in Asia, in 4 Asian nations. Alright? In 4, I'm not going to change in 4 because 4 is 4. It doesn't change. Different countries in Asia, Asian nations. Okay? So let's look at that. So here is my paraphrase. The chart displays expenditure on cars in 4 Asian nations. So I've colored these ones and highlighted this ones because I want to reiterate this point. Cars. A lot of you right now are going, that's not a good paraphrase. You copied the word. Okay, so let me talk about that for a minute. What happens in the test is teachers have told students that you cannot repeat any words. So what they do is they get the question, they're trying to paraphrase it, and they get a question like cars. And what they do is they think for about 5 minutes, cars, what's the synonym of cars? I don't know. I'm running out of time. Oh no, I'm stressed out. I'm panicked. Alright, I failed my test. Oh no, I've only 15 minutes left. And just panic and stress sets in. Another thing they do, if they don't do that, or they might do this at the same time, is they think, cars, what's another way that I can say this? Vehicle? I don't know. Will I try that? Automobile? Will I try? I'm not sure. And they add in something that they're just not sure because they've been told that the worst thing you can do on the test is copy a word. Alright? It is not. It is fine to copy some words. Just some. 1 or 2. If you get stuck, just copy the word and move on. It is not automatically going to get you a band 5. And I guarantee the students that will argue about that with me are the students that got 5 or 5.5 on their last test. So how did that strategy work out for you? 4, some words you just can't change. Alright? Numbers, for example. There are no other ways to say 4. Okay, you could put it in numerically, but it's exactly the same thing. Another thing, I showed this to a few students once and they said, oh, you copied the word Asia, Asian. No, it's not the same word. There's an N on the end of this one. You can change the form of the word. Okay, so Asia, Asian. It's the same root word, Asia, but I've just changed the form of it. And it's totally fine for you to do that. And you're actually demonstrating to the examiner that you have a wide-ranging vocabulary by doing that. Because people who only know one version of the word, do they have a higher level of English than the person that knows all of the different versions of that word? So don't be afraid to copy some words. For example, cars, for, and don't be afraid to change the form of that word. Okay, so here's a little checklist. Does it mean the same thing? Little checklist to see whether your paraphrase is good. So the most important thing is, does this mean the same thing as this? Yes, it does, 100%. Are there any errors? No, there are no errors. So grammatically, it's fine. The meaning of the words is the same. The collocations are fine. It's all good. So if you can answer those two questions, does it mean the same, and are there any errors, then you're fine. The mistakes that we talked about, the 7 mistakes, like if you use a loose synonym or you use an incorrect synonym, the meaning is not going to be the same. If you have collocation errors and grammatical errors and you're getting mixed up with things and it's just, turns into a mess, then you're going to be making grammatical errors or vocabulary errors, and that's going to lower your score. So you want to get to a point where no matter what question comes up, you are pretty sure, does it mean the same? Yes. Are there any errors? No. If you need help with paraphrasing, it's probably a vocabulary and grammar issue that you're having. You don't really have a paraphrasing issue. Like if you keep practicing paraphrasing and you're still making mistakes, you need to go back and improve your grammar and improve your vocabulary. So task 2, look at the following line graph and paraphrase the question. So what I've done is I've just made it a little bit bigger for you guys, just in case you have any internet speed problems. The line graph shows the number of serious crimes that occurred in London between 2003 and 2012. What I would like you to do, paraphrase it. Very, very simple. Paraphrase it. Comment below with your paraphrase. I'll be picking the best ones and I'll be commenting on and correcting as many as I can. However, I can't guarantee that I'll be able to look at all of them because there are more than 10,000 of you. So the rules. Only post tasks below this video. A number of you emailed me your tasks yesterday. I really appreciate the emails. I appreciate how keen you are. That's really great. But do appreciate that there are 10,000 people in this group and I'm trying to get through as much work as possible. Do not demand that I look at yours personally. I'll look at them all and I'll give you collective feedback. And keep it simple. Don't worry about, getting everything absolutely perfect. What I want you to focus on are synonyms. All right. Are the synonyms the same? Do they mean the same? Collocations and grammar. But don't try and write the perfect paraphrase with the perfect words and spend, 30, 40 minutes on one sentence. Don't worry about that too much. There's a long week ahead and there's a lot of work ahead. Tomorrow, because we're going to look at overviews. So thank you very much, guys. Hope that you found that useful. It was a pleasure teaching you and I look forward to reading your paraphrases. Thanks very much, guys. Bye-bye.